kids who seem to have a perfectly normal childhood at first.
You're wonderful. Tweety bird. Tweety bird. That's right. That's beep, right. Beep. Beep, beep. That's a road runner. Taylor, you're so smart.
I love this video because it gives you a rare opportunity to see into a child who's developing normally, seemingly, before the onset of autism. It allows you to see that Taylor was demonstrating, if not just normal, above normal speech and language skills. If I were to see a 2-year-old who was using, say, 2 to 4 words in a sentence with maybe 50 to 75% intelligibility, I would say he was doing fine. But in this video, you see Taylor, who's using 7 to 9 words in a sentence. He has nearly 100% intelligibility. He has excellent use of the rules of language. The word order, the meaning to the words, the word endings, pronouns, all of these things he's using appropriately, and he's interacting with his mother appropriately with great eye contact and turn-taking, and it's really amazing to see how typical and above and beyond his language skills were prior to the onset of autism.
Big blue-eyed, little tousle-haired 2-year-old, and he was eager and ready to learn. He was excited. He would come and call me by name, Miss Susan. He would call his classmates by name. He would participate in all the activities that we had, particularly the sensory activities, the painting, the pouring beans and playing with Play-Doh. He enjoyed books.
I distinctly remember a visit at around 4 years of age where his parents were totally frustrated about a sudden change in his personality. He'd gone from a communicative child to a child who didn't talk and was a very difficult child to deal with. And when we saw him at that point, we did in fact see a child who had gone from a very normal childhood to something very different.
For 2 years, Taylor and I had a bond of love and time spent together that I wouldn't give for anything else in the world. And we transitioned into a time that Taylor was showing such bizarre behavior. I would pick up the box of cereal to pour him some cereal, and my doing that would set him off into uncontrollable screams. And I could tell that it was just my action of reaching for the box of cereal. And it took me several weeks to figure out that it was where I had my hand on the cereal box. And perhaps, I don't know, perhaps I was covering up someone's face or the cornflake rooster's body. There had to be something that I was touching that he didn't want me to touch. And that was just one thing I figured out. His whole life was like that all day long, that I was having to be a detective and try to figure out what I was doing that caused him such discomfort that he would scream. And we soon got to the point that I would say he was screaming and crying approximately 30 minutes out of every hour that he was awake. And it was devastating.
By this time I had changed. My autism had taken hold around age 3. Language was hard for me. I had a Mickey Mouse cake for my birthday that year. Usually seeing Mickey made me happy, but here I panicked because Mickey was going to be cut up. I couldn't help this.
I was 3, 4, 5 years old and spent part of every waking hour every day screaming when he couldn't be touched or held or comforted because it seemed to hurt and make him scream louder, or when he'd withdraw and not respond to anything around him. And then when he eventually talked, he could only use single words or simple 3 or 4 word sentences. These days, people tell me they're surprised to learn that Taylor is autistic. I recall the months when we couldn't get him outside or even to a room in our house that had windows because he had developed a deathly fear of clouds. And that was just one of the unusual and uncontrollable fears that arrived after his autism had taken hold.
Hi, I'm Taylor Crowe. I have autism. You might not notice my autism very much, and that's part of the story I'm about to tell. But first I want you to know what I'm doing these days. As we're filming this, I'm a senior at the California Institute of the Arts, majoring in character animation. CalArts is the most famous animation school in the world. John Lasseter, the head of Pixar and Disney Animation, the guy that did Toy Story and Cars and Finding Nemo, majored in character animation at CalArts. So did Brad Bird, who created The Incredibles. Steven Hillenburg, who came up with SpongeBob, also majored in character animation at CalArts. And me. Less than 1 in 5 who apply get accepted, and I got in on my first try.
Hearing someone describe Taylor as mildly autistic is a remarkable, joyful thing every time I hear it. It's wonderful. It's an answered prayer. And it's the result of Taylor working very, very hard to make it happen. He's an extraordinary person. He is an inspiration to me.